What do you do, Kanekis? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. So in this one, I'm going to be talking about why GDP is a flawed metric. It is your least favorite economist's favorite metric to use to compare economies around the world. But before we get into it, please hit the like button, subscribe as well. If you're new and you aren't already, be sure to catch future videos I do. And let's get into it. So GDP, it is a metric that is used a lot, especially by economists and governments to prop up the economy. It's a way to make it look like it is doing better than it actually is. So what is it? It is, reading from investopedia.com. The calculation of a country's GDP encompasses all private and public spending, government outlays. Remember that. I'm going to go through the formulas so it'll help to understand it. Government outlays, basically government spending, investments, additions to private inventories, paid-in construction costs, and the foreign balance of trade. So that's net exports. So exports minus imports. Once again, I'll go through the formula in a bit. So what does GDP tell you? It is a country's GDP represents the final market value of all the products and services that a country produces in a single year. Remember this definition, that a country produces in a single year. Another way to measure GDP is as the sum of four factors: consumer spending, government spending, net exports, and total investment. So let's look at the formula, GDP formula. So it is consumption plus government spending plus investment, so that's private investments, and net exports. Now, the two aspects of these that I want to focus on today are consumption and government spending, because as they defined it earlier, it is what the country produces in a year. Now, let me ask you guys, do the words consumption and government spending sound like production? Already, you can see why it's flawed. So to focus on consumption, this is basically you and I going out to buy goods in the market. But unfortunately, we know now that people are using credit cards to pay for these goods. So if you look at a metric called household debt as a percentage of GDP, it paints a clearer picture. Canada at 103. Hey, Canadians, listen, Canadians, are you guys okay? Is everything going well over there? I know Trudeau has absolutely massacred your economy, but good Lord, 103%. 103% of your of your GDP. Once again, a very faulty metric. It is very faulty, but 103% of everything you produce in the year comes from household debt. That is silly. That is silly to me. Then of course UK and US are very, very close behind. We know that credit cards are used everywhere in these economies. You can see that credit card debt has reached the highest level it has on record, about $1.21 trillion. And it's climbing, it is accelerating. You can see how during the pandemic, people paid it down because they were given stimulus checks. But then right after that, because of inflation, skyrockets. It absolutely skyrockets. And this feeds into the GDP metric. They're counting this as positive because people are spending money. So you're like, yeah, it's great, the economy's fine. But what are they using to spend? They're using credit cards. With everyday goods, groceries. I've spoken about credit cards. You guys know where I stand with them. I'm not a fan. I'm generally not a fan of them. And the next element is government spending. This is the part. Remember, it is consumption, government spending, investment, and net exports. Net exports, that's for another day, I suppose. But government spending, guys, government spending. I have mentioned several times that government is wasteful. They do not know how to invest because they're investing other people's money. They're investing our money. They're investing our tax money. And interest. So government, we know that they only get money in two ways: by taxing and by borrowing. And when they borrow money, they pay interest on the money that they borrow. Now, the interest that they pay counts towards government spending. I'm sorry, but the whole thing is stupid. The interest that they pay counts towards government spending, which also props up the GDP metric, and they put it all together and say, look, the economy is fine because GDP is up. So I searched this on Google whether interest payments count towards government spending, and this is what it says. Sorry, it counts towards GDP, and this is what it says. Yes, interest payments on government debt are included in government spending and are counted towards GDP. It explains the government borrows money to cover the gap between what it spends and what it raises in tax. The government pays interest on this debt, which is the cost of borrowing money. The interest payments are included in the government's total spending. The total government spending is used to calculate GDP. Do you see? You see how they use this smoke and mirror game to confuse people, to tell you the economy is fine, GDP is up. This is how they do it. It incentivizes government to spend, prop up the economy so that they can say we're not in a recession. The official technical requirement for a recession is 3 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, which is why they keep spending so that GDP never goes negative. And as they keep spending, they're driving themselves into a bigger and bigger deficit, which means that the money becomes more and more worthless. And as the money becomes worthless, the cost of goods goes up and the people become poorer. There's another element that I want to show you. The interest. So we're focusing on this part. This is usdebtclock.org. This is the largest line items that the US government spends money on. Once again, I'm using the US as a proxy for all other Western governments. The largest one is Medicare and Medicaid, then Social Security, then interest on the debt. The interest has now surpassed the defense spending. The interest has passed the defense spending. Soon enough, it's going to pass Social Security. Those in the UK, Social Security is like national insurance. It's the equivalent of national insurance. And another thing I like to focus on is the defense spending. So defense spending, yes, that also contributes to government spending, also contributes to GDP growth. So can you see why they keep pushing for wars in the Middle East, in Ukraine? Do you finally see why many European governments, France, UK, Germany, they are fighting to continue this Ukraine war? Because they need the government, they need the spending to contribute to GDP to prop up their economy. This is why I advocate for gold. With gold, governments cannot print currency to oblivion to keep funding these wars. Advocating for gold advocates for peace. Yes, I know there were still wars back in the day, but they were shorter lived. And they weren't nonsensical. Usually the wars were for, religious ideologies or resources, so trying to acquire more land. They weren't just for the sake of propping up GDP. People are losing their lives because governments want to prop up the GDP. They want to make sure the number doesn't go down. That's just it. That's about it for this video. It was just a mini rant, to be honest. I really don't like the way governments and economists use numbers, statistics to lie, to confuse the public, to tell them that things are better than they really are. So it's mainly just to educate, to raise awareness, and yes, also to advocate for gold. I will do a future video talking about why gold has a marketing problem, because it's associated with so many negative things like war, and also fears. But I think there's so many better, there's so many aspects of it that could be marketed better. So I'll talk about it in a future video. I hope you did enjoy this one. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe as well if you're new. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.